Hello everyone. Let's start with the concept of John Locke. So, एक brief background कि जॉन लॉक के टाइम के पहले there was a divine right of kings. Divine right of kings ये जो doctrine है, ये जो philosophy है, ये medieval rulers में ये थी where they believed that they had the divine right, the God-given right to rule over their subjects. और उस सोसाइटी में विच वॉज हाईली अनइक्वल उनके पास बहुत सारे राइट्स थे बट सब्जेक्ट पीपल डिड नॉट हैव एनी राइट। तो ऐसे में जॉन लॉक he challenged this notion and argued for popular right. He argued for natural right of life, of liberty, of property. He argued that people should have the choices, that power should flow from people. He was the first person who argued for democracy, and that's why he is widely regarded as the father of liberalism. And unlike earlier thinkers who based their thoughts on kingship, on religious authority, on religious morality, on ethics, Locke based his political thought on individual, on natural rights, and the consent of the people, consent of the subject, consent of the governed. And as of his life, the events that shape his thoughts were the English Civil War, the execution of Charles I, and the Glorious Revolution of 1688. So all these events, they taught Locke that if power left unchecked, it can easily become tyrannical. And however, उसके और थॉमस हॉब्स के एक्सपीरियंस सेम थे, बट स्टिल ही वॉज मोर ऑप्टिमिस्टिक। अगर आगे आप देखेंगे जो नेचुरल स्टेट है वो दोनों का वो कंसेप्ट दोनों में नेचुरल स्टेट एंड सोशल कॉन्ट्रैक्ट्स ये दोनों लॉक और थॉप्स में similar situations are there, similar postulations are there, but the forwarded argument they based on the different platform. It was as if the Thomas Hobbes and John Locke they were two sides of the same coin. So Thomas Hobbes, who he believed that human beings they are very dangerous and selfish. They would act for their natural instinct, for their primitive desires. उसी के रेस्पेक्ट में John Locke believed that people were care of reason and morality. He was more optimistic. And ऐसा भी नहीं है कि he demanded absolute authority. John Locke argued that government must exist to serve the people and must be limited by law. फिर मेन वर्क की बात करते हैं. So his most influential political text is the Treatises of the Government. तो जो फर्स्ट treatise है, he attacked this divine rights of king by arguing that no ruler has the God-given right to rule over others. ऐसा कहीं लिखा हुआ नहीं है and then it does not exist at all. फिर second treatise में he laid out his political theory which was based on natural rights, the consent of the subject, of the governed, and the right to revolt against tyranny. So all in all, his focus was the rights and the dignity of individuals. Now let's proceed on to the core concepts. The first such concept is the state of nature. So यहाँ पे argument जो है, जो background जो है, context जो है, वो Thomas Hobbes जैसा ही है, that there is a hypothetical scenario, an anarchical situation in which there would be no government, no law, no political authority. But unlike Thomas Hobbes के जो political thought है, जो पिछला वीडियो है, वो आपको याद होगा, who saw this state as a place of constant fear, of constant tension, of violence and conflict, Locke presented a much more optimistic and hopeful view. And yes, this is again, it's like a different interpretation of truth. It's not that Thomas Hobbes ने जो कहा वो सही होगा, वो it is a word casted in stone. There might be other situations, there might be other outcomes, and John Locke here he presented the same outcome for a different for similar postulation, similar hypothesis. And here John Locke believed that in that state of nature, in that anarchical state of nature when there is no government, all individuals exist in a condition of perfect freedom and perfect equality, which means that every person is free to act and use the property as wish. So यहाँ पे he was not as pessimist as Thomas Hobbes. He was quite optimistic, and he believed that when such anarchical situation exists, the people, it's not like that they are going to throw themselves in violence, throw themselves in the gladiatorial arena. They may think otherwise. They may look for their own freedom and equality. So यहाँ पे people they would look for themselves, and they, जब उनको पता है कि yes, if they want to enjoy this freedom for long, they should not infringe on the rights of others. They should not threaten others' liberty. Then he also argued that freedom here is not chaotic license. It is unnaturally regulated by the laws of nature. So here he brought the natural state of affairs into the account. Because, yes, other than the political thing, other than the political concept that has been built by, advocated, and argued or forwarded by various political philosophers, there is a thing called nature. Nature has its own law, the law of nature. So this natural law, it instructs individual to respect others' life, liberty, and property. And most of us, we believe in this thing कि कुछ लोग जो है जिनके है ना पंख ही ऐसे होते हैं, जिनका बैंड ऑफ माइंड ही ऐसा होता है कि दे keep poking their nose into others' affairs. Other than that, most of people, they live up to this philosophy, which is known as live and let live. And this is quite a reasoned compromise. People know that if they do not invite the trouble, it is more likely that the trouble will not come. क्योंकि अगर वो खुद अगर अपने पाँव पे कुल्हाड़ी नहीं मारेंगे तो अल्टीमेटली उनकी तरफ से तो वो कुल्हाड़ी उनके पैर पे नहीं आएगी. उसके बाद इट्स anarchical world, it's an unpredictable world, कुछ हो जाए. But ultimately they will have this thought at the end of the day कि कम से कम उन्होंने ये उड़ता तीर नहीं लिया है. John Locke forwarded the same law that people would respect others' life, liberty, and property not because of their altruism, because they want themselves, they want to enjoy this property, the life, the liberty themselves. And however, he recognized some important limitation in this natural state of affair. So, yes, some people, most of the people, they would generally respect each other's right. But there will be someone who would not act that rationally. Other people who would try to poke their nose. There will be some troubled elements, antisocial element, or someone just out of curiosity, someone out of jumping genes. They might want to take that arrow. So ऐसे में when we are not sure कि सब के सब लोग जो है are on the same page, so we need an impartial authority, a common judge, so that the disputes that may arise, the conflict they may arise over property, over freedom, over personal boundaries, over rights, they need to be resolved. और ऐसी impartial authority और common judge ही ये disputes जो है ये resolve कर सकता है. So ultimately, John Locke believed that while the state of nature, the anarchical situation, is relatively peaceful and governed by natural moral principle, but it has certain limitation. It is insecure and inconvenient, and it cannot be assured that all the people, all the elements would work on the same page. So, ऐसे में there is an need of an institution that can protect against such violations and injustices. फिर the second concept, the social contract. फिर जो फर्स्ट प्रिंसिपल, नेचुरल प्रिंसिपल की जो लिमिटेशन है, जो इनकन्वीनियंस है, उसी के बेसिस पे जो सेकंड concept है, it has been built. So when we are not sure if all the people would respect each other's rights, each other's personal boundaries, so ऐसे में we need an institution. और उस institution के लिए, वो institution बनाने के लिए we need an agreement among individual, the individuals who want to live with that compromise. So ये सारे individual हैं, वो आके with an agreement form a government, a government, और वो गवर्नमेंट है, it would look after the postal affair, it would resolve the dispute, and it would protect the postal boundaries. So यहाँ पे भी unlike Hobbes who believed that contract was about giving unlimited power to a ruler so that postal security can be maintained, यहाँ पे जो John Locke है, its version, his version was on protecting natural rights and limiting government power. So he was not in support of an absolute power. So according to Locke, people they are voluntarily come together and they are agreeing to establish a political society with the government. So ऐसे में there is no case, no basis for giving absolute authority when people are on the voluntary terms. Then according to him, the role of government is to act as a neutral judge, and it should ensure that the people's individual rights to life, liberty, and property are protected and respected. Then the government it should settle disputes, enforce law, and maintain peace and order. These are the main roles of government. Fair, the same thing. He believed that the authority of government is not absolute or inherent because it was the government, it has been created out of the agreement of the people. So the very institution of government is deriving its power from the people, from the subject. So that people are the true sources of political power, then the absolute authority it rests with the people, not the government. So the government is more likely a trustee or servant entrusted with responsibility, not with unchecked authorities. फिर the next step कि अगर government अपनी ड्यूटी नहीं कर पाती है, if it fails in its duties and become tyrannical, authoritarian, or violates people's natural right, then the government they have the natural right to withdraw their consent to either reform or replace the government. So that's why this social contract of John Locke it emphasized that people voluntarily come together to form a government to protect the natural rights, and such agreement is based on mutual terms, and the created government it has limited power, it should remain accountable to people with certain primary roles. Now third concept, natural rights, life, liberty and property. So इस concept में John Locke believed that there are certain fundamental rights that every individual possesses inherently, simply by being human, simply by birth, and they exist independently of any government or social system. That's why they are natural rights, rights that are given by nature. And these rights are universal, given to everyone. They are inalienable, means they cannot be taken away, and they must be respected by any legitimate authority. So he identified three such natural rights. First, the right to life, which means every person has the right to preserve their own life and defend themselves against harm. Then the second is the right to have liberty, to enjoy freedom, to cherish it. And such freedom does not only mean the freedom from oppressive control, but also mean to enjoy life with a full potential. Then the third right is the right to property, which is the most influential and distinctive idea, or इसके according that people gain ownership right by their labor. And when I say it, it is most influential idea because the possessiveness that people often equate with people often attach with the material things, it is because they have put in a lot of efforts, they have put in their labor, and this labor it gives them a meaning, a purpose. Otherwise लोग क्यों काम करेंगे, like मैं क्यों काम कर रहा हूँ, आप लोग क्यों पढ़ रहे हैं, everyone. It is not just about material wealth, it is about having a purpose in life. And sometimes, and most often, not sometimes, most often than not. That purpose it creates, it has a lot of reverberations with a lot of attachment with material things. क्योंकि if you put in a lot of effort, if you mix up your labor, then you have something in mind. You might have some reward in your mind. And property is one just fruit that gives you purpose. So this particular right, it should not be taken away and it should not be, you know, uh, thrown in the backyard. So यहाँ पे एक example दिया हुआ है. When a person cultivates land or builds a home or builds anything, any product, this effort, this work, it creates a personal connection, personal attachment to the property by granting them rightful ownership. So this rightful ownership is not just about material wealth. It is about the personal independence, about security, about dignity, and about purpose. So that's why he considered the right to property as the natural right. So कोई भी government है, it has a primary role to protect all these three rights. Now, the influence of Locke's natural right. So, by giving emphasis on natural rights, his idea has become foundational aspect for modern liberal democracy. जैसे जो American Declaration of Independence in 1776, it famously echoed the the idea of Locke, the natural rights of Locke, of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And I give you this I give particular support to the ideas of John Locke, especially of property, because the creation it needs incentive, it needs the reward structure. Like जो हमारा इवोल्यूशन है, क्योंकि मैं एंथ्रोपोलॉजी भी पढ़ाता हूँ, ठीक है, तो उसमें यह है कि जो मॉडर्न जो एडवांसमेंट है, कि जिस जीन पूल से हम लोग निकले हैं, जो हमारे एंसेस्टर्स हैं, द प्राइमेट स्टॉक, द एप स्टॉक, तो उनसे हम लोग एडवांस इसलिए हुए हैं, दिस पर्टिकुलर थिंग, इंसेंटिव, वी हैड सर्टेन इंसेंटिव. और जब हमारे एंसेस्टर स्पेशली होमो इरेक्टस हो गए, निएंडरटल्स हो गए, व्हेन दे हंटेड अ लार्ज मैमथ, अ लार्ज वुली मैमथ, क्योंकि उस टाइम आइस एज थी, आइस एज में most of the animals they were quite fatty and large in size. So a large mammoth, it acted as a large incentive, a large reward structure, even though it was a high risk thing. So more risk, more reward. क्योंकि अगर एक large mammoth can be hunted down, it can provide the required nutrition for a whole group and for many days to come. So in the same way, the natural right to property, it also acts as an incentive. And that's why we are working. That's why we support liberal democracies. फिर जो लॉक के आइडिया है, they were similarly echoed in the French Declaration of Rights of Man and the Citizen of 1789. And this declaration, this French Revolution drew heavily from Locke's natural rights theory, emphasizing that universal, the freedom is universal and the equality principle, they should be respected. Now, the fourth concept was the right to revolution, which is the people's duty. So यहाँ पे John Locke ने कहा है, which is his most powerful and revolutionary idea, that people do not have only not just the rights, but also the duty to resist and overthrow a government. So यहाँ पे people may willingly come together, voluntarily come together to form a government by an agreement, but if the government do not uh, chart the expected course, if government voluntarily or knowingly if violate their right, if the government does not protect them, then it is the duty of people to overthrow that government. So he believed that when a government violate the trust of people that have place in it, and it abuses its power or fails to protect the natural rights of people, if in short a government अपना काम ढंग से नहीं कर रही है, then people can call it back, people can overthrow it. And this was quite radical during Locke's time in 17th century, when even mere questioning or resisting rulers was often considered treason and harshly punished. ये चीज आप देख सकते हैं. He was, a bold philosopher of 17th century. और उसी के कंपैरिजन में when we compare Mahatma Gandhi, when Mahatma Gandhi, in 1925, when he spoke against the British government, he was charged of sedition. So, और आज के प्रेजेंट टाइम में भी बहुत सारी गवर्नमेंट है, इंक्लूडिंग our own government, when anybody openly talks about, when openly criticize the government, they are charged for sedition, charged for treason. ऐसे में आज के 225 साल पहले, ये इवन 200 साल पहले, to speak against government often in such harsh way, it was, tantamount to blasphemy. But still, he was quite bold and he boldly challenged the tyranny of the government, and he insisted that such tyranny it must never be tolerated at any cost. And the next concept, the importance of law, life, law, property, and freedom. So, first, he argued against this common belief that law limits freedom. Instead, he believed that true freedom can exist only within the framework of law. And for law, for Locke, laws are not just chains that bind people, but laws are safeguards that protect them from injustice and chaos. So, यहाँ पे he put a lot of faith in the legal framework, in law. And law की definition according to law, it must be created with the consent of government, must be created with the consent of people. People agree to form such rules which are fair for everyone. तो ये जो common and fair rules हैं, they are applicable to everyone and they will protect all individuals from such domination. लेकिन लॉक ने यह भी कहा है कि विदाउट सच लॉ द स्ट्रॉन्ग एंड पावरफुल they could easily take advantage of the weak, and then society can descend into disorder, society can degenerate, and it can revert to the rule of the powerful. And law के अलावा he also played great importance on property rights, क्योंकि यहाँ पे जो property rights, the money, the incentive, the reward, the labor, all of them are things that create personal stature. अगर किसी ने वर्क मेहनत की है, एफर्ट डाले, and he built a product for himself, he built a factory, he became a bureaucrat, he became a researcher, he became a scholar, he became a minister, कोई भी endeavor है, कोई भी activity है, but अगर उसने एफर्ट डाले हैं, उसी एफर्ट पे उसका स्टेचर डिपेंड करता है. और जो सोसाइटी में जितनी हायरार्की है, इट इज क्वाइट फ्लूइड. जितना दिखता है उतनी रिजिड है नहीं. इफ यू स्टे ऑन कोर्स, इफ यू keep working hard, then and not just hard, I mean, if you know put in your labor and do it in the smart way, then you know that not only the success will come, but the prestige will also come. And prestige is what hierarchy is. So यहाँ पे property according to law is more than just physical possession. It includes the right to control the fruit of one's labor, and the fruit, it includes a lot of things. It includes the stature, the prestige, the hierarchy, the incentive, the purpose, and the independence. Where in Locke's philosophy, property rights, they allow individual to sustain themselves by being dependent on others. So यहाँ पे independence, and independence means the freedom. So finally, for Locke, these three concepts, law, property, and liberty, they are closely linked and interrelated. फिर बात करते हैं Locke and the modern state. First, his ideas have deeply influenced modern government, और उसमें there is a concept of limited government. कि जो गवर्नमेंट की पावर है दे आर क्लियरली डिमार्केटेड, क्लियरली डिफाइंड एंड restricted by laws or constitution. And he also introduced the important principles of checks and balance, जिसमें जो different branches of government हैं, executive, legislature and judiciary, they keep each other in control without overstepping into others' jurisdiction. Then another legacy from Locke is the strong emphasis on protecting civil rights, civil liberties, civil freedom, which are inalienable, inviolable, and no government can trespass on them. Where he also championed democratic accountability, जिसके according जो government हैं, they exist for people and must be responsive and accountable to the people. क्योंकि government जो है, it has been created by the consent of people, so government cannot betray that consent. And where his idea about government by consent on natural right and the rule of law, all of these ideas have found their shelter in modern liberal democracy. क्योंकि इंडिया में भी liberal democracy है, so जितनी भी democracy है, they have their foundation in the ideas of Locke's political thought. फिर criticism की बात करते हैं. The first criticism is about blind spot. क्योंकि यहाँ पे जो लॉक्स की जो थियरी है ऑन प्रॉपर्टी राइट्स, इट हैज बीन क्रिटिसाइज्ड फॉर इग्नोरिंग इश्यूज ऑफ इकोनॉमिक इनइक्वलिटी, और जो अदर criticism which has been labeled on him is that he tried to exacerbate economic inequality in the disguise of advocating for property rights. Then other criticized that Locke, who wrote about liberty, he invested in companies that profited from slavery and colonialism, which is a deep contradiction. कि एक तो liberty की बात कर रहे हैं, then you are supporting or you are trying to exacerbate slavery and colonialism. So both are conflicting ideas. Then the second criticism labeled on him is about exclusion, that his ideas of early liberalism, they included women, indigenous people, slaves and poor by its promise of freedom and equality. Yani, freedom and equality were given to equal citizens, or women, poor, slaves, they were not given the equal right. Which a contemporary critic hai, that many feminist, post-colonial and critical race theories, they have reinterpreted Locke's theory and try it or advocate it for to be more inclusive today. Again, यहाँ पे इनका आइडिया और एक्सक्लूजन का आइडिया सेम है. They try that more people should be included in the framework of right, क्योंकि जो भी rights, natural rights की बात की है, उसमें जो modern demands हैं वो बढ़ती जा रही है. And the conclusion, his critical thought laid the foundation for modern liberal democracy by emphasizing natural rights, individual liberty, and the government by the consent. Where he envisioned a social contract जिसमें स्टेट का जो प्राइमरी रोल है is to protect life, liberty and property, और जिसमें government it stays accountable to people क्योंकि it has been created by the consent of people. Where his belief in rule of law and limited government, they continue to influence constitutional framework globally. And this is it. Where agar you have found my lectures helpful, you can consider supporting my work with a voluntary contribution, क्योंकि I am doing all it for free education, and this is not just a loose talk. Anyway, any amount is appreciated if you want to support me with a voluntary contribution. This is my UPI. And इसमें फिर अगर कोई चीज़ जो है अगर छूट गई है, something that I might have escaped or missed, or something that I have not given a much detailed explanation, or something that you also need further explanation, आप पूछ सकते हैं. जो यूजीसी के आया जो लेक्चर्स हैं वो भी रिकॉर्ड होते रहेंगे विद टाइम, और आई एम क्वाइट अवेयर ऑफ द जून डेडलाइन। जो वीडियोज हैं, जो प्लेलिस्ट है, वो भी आप देखते रहिए। दिस इज इट। थैंक यू वेरी मच।